ध्यायेत् शारदचन्द्रसुन्दरमुखम् ताम्रारविन्देक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवराभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमात्रोज्ज्वलम् स्वात्मानन्दसानुभूतिविवशम् सर्वानवद्याङ्गकम् श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणीश्वरं गुरुवरं योगासनाध्यासितम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रं यहमहमिति साक्षादात्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वतामच्युतव पवनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। Namo Ramana. We will commence the Friday evening Atma Vicharam by listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham and meditating on it. We will be reading his Upadesham for the evening from the book Ramana Answers, Self-Enquiry 1900 to 1950, a compilation of all the answers given by Bhagavan to devotees' question on the subject matter of Atma Vichara. This compilation has been done by our founder president, Sri R. Natarajan Ji, and we have been contemplating on the question and answers put to Bhagavan on subject matter of Atma Vichara between 1936 to 1950. And today we have reached the 63rd question. The devotee asks Bhagavan, after contemplating on this question answer, meditating on it by Master's grace, we will have a 20 minutes Atma Vichara. Following that, our President Sharda Akka would be talking about Atma Vichara as it has been contemplated in Ramana Gita by Ganapati Muni, who has also captured Bhagavan's question and answers to many devotees on Atma Vichara in Ramana Gita. And finally, we would have the concluding prayers to Bhagavan. And the 63rd question is, the devotee asks, how shall I find out who am I? The question is, how shall I find out who am I? Bhagavan, are there two selves, or the one self to find the other? The answer is, are there two selves, or the one self to find the other? This is the root question, or the root belief to which Bhagavan is countering with a question, are there two selves, one to find the other? Because there is a very strong belief that there is I, the individual, by name Dilip, who wants to find out who who I am. That is why Dilip, is putting this question to Bhagavan. How am I to find out who am I? And that belief fundamentally that I am capable, I am an individual capable of knowing something else apart, which is the self, and therefore getting a clear understanding, knowledge of it is very much a capability of mine. So I am asking the Sadguru, how am I to find out who am I? That is the main idea. And Bhagavan is putting a counter question. Are there two selves for one to find out the other? So he is not trying to give a resolve or a methodology in terms of this is steps A, B, C that you should do to find out who am I. In fact, he is trying to question the very belief that I as an individual is capable of knowing the self or knowing something by putting a question, who am I and how do I go about doing it. This comes to the fundamental belief as, that's why in the Vedanta it comes to the fundamental belief that I, the individual, is limited to this matter, body. So there is I, the chit, the capabilities of the pure consciousness. I take it to be mine, and this matter, this body, which is inert, which is totally incapable to say even I, and hold it as really me, the bringing the togetherness of the consciousness, the mixing, the knot, the chit charak granthi, mixing up the awareness to the matter and giving rise to an individual idea. And in the sense, I hold this to be more real, that I am a conscious human entity, a body capable of knowing, and that is me. That idea, that belief, the fundamental belief is so strong. And Bhagavan is attacking the root knot here by the question, are there two selves, one to find the other? Unless we really inquire and find out, unless we meditate on this question, we will not be able to transcend and recognize the false amalgamation of things that we do, or a false imagination that we have created. There is only pure awareness, and then there is this pure inert object or matter called body. But somehow there is an idea of bringing these two together, and therefore that idea sort of animates this matter. We can move the arms, we can move the legs, and therefore we feel that it is, and therefore this I, the individual who has given rise to, feels a sense of capable of knowing. Right now, my mother-in-law is had a trauma, and she was quite normal before that. And right now she's not able to move her hands, move her legs. She's completely aware. She's completely aware of who her name and her whereabouts and everything, her identity with that name and that body. But but somehow she is not able to move the hands, the legs to the degree that she was able to move earlier. Now, when if we go back to her state when she was, or we take our state and see when we are perfectly able to move everything, so there is a strong sense of belief that I can do that, I can know this. But technically, if we see another body which is suffering now, we find out that it is some other force that is making it all possible. And this matter is completely inert. It can't move by itself. It is something else which makes it possible. Even an idea, even a thought that I want to move my hand cannot move it. Though she can very well think of the thought to lift the hand or to do something, it is simply not possible. But on a day-to-day basis, for us who are quite capable of moving the hands and legs, we feel that a thought will make it possible for us to do. But here is an example where we are seeing that though there is a thought to move the hands, the thought is not able to move. There is something else which makes it all possible. And we have not even bothered to inquire about it. We have taken it sort of for granted that it is there and it is helping. I get a thought and I am able to lift my hand, therefore I am very much capable. This individual. And therefore this individual is very much capable of knowing and everything. This fundamental belief that the awareness which has been tied to a matter, which is the body, and somehow with a thought, I am able to move, I am able to lift, I am able to do. So this whole belief is making us have a very strong sense of division. That I am an individual very much capable of knowing or capable of doing. This fundamental division, which is very strong in us, we need to question what has it given us in return, this idea, this strong belief. As Bhagavan often says, it is like if we take sleep where there is total absence of this individual division or an idea, then we feel very peaceful. But the moment we have given rise to this individual idea, I don't see as saying that the day was all peaceful. We feel tired, fatigued. We go through huge swings of emotions from morning till evening. The body, this inert body, sometimes is very good when you eat food, and sometimes can be very bad if the same food is eaten. We don't seem to have any control over any of this. It seems this association, this identity, is not something that we can say is very, very happy at all times. It is happy at very, very few instances, and as long as the data that we have, like I can move my hands, I can move my legs, and things happen according to that expectation. Suddenly, if something becomes impossible for me to do, and my data is not concurring with that, my past experience is not concurring with what is the new state of affairs. Let's say I'm a normal person having nice 2 square meals, but suddenly I have stomach pain, and that is not normal, and my data is not concurring with it. So I'm not happy until the status quo is brought. So essentially, if we analyze this association of or giving reality to this chit jada granthi for us and taking that to be me has absolutely not warranting us a full state of ever happiness, but yet we want to believe, even when we sit here in a meditation, even when we want to inquire, we want to very strongly believe that I want to retain this identity and then gain a new knowledge or gain a new experience. And not only that, I want to make a claim of having known and having experienced. So this is the whole approach that we are taking, though we know that it is bound to vary from moment to moment, and therefore Bhagavan is asking, are there two, one to know the other? So unless we inquire, who is this knower who wants to know the self? Who is this knower who wants to put the question, who am I? Who is this inquirer? Until we really fundamentally trace that entity back to the root, then we see, as Bhagavan says, Kabalita Ghana Vishwarupa Kiranavalya Arunachala Paramatman Aruno Bhava. Then all this gross matter, this knot that has been tied between the conscious entity and the matter, is all absorbed when we really inquire, and we find that the pure self, the pure awareness, the pure presence alone is ever shining without any sense of division. So the whole idea of Atma Vichara is that we spend a lot of time contemplating on this chit jada granthi. We see from morning till night, we think a lot about body, we think a lot about mind, we think a lot about our intellectual capability, we think a lot about our egoistic approaches to things. How much time do we think of that pure awareness, that pure self that we are, wherein there is no thought, no division? How much do we contemplate on it? So Bhagavan, through this question, who am I, is asking us to get back to our real nature and to contemplate on that, and therefore experience the ever-present shade, and not to run into the hot sun, which is this attention to the chit jada granthi, or giving reality to it. And that Bhagavan brings about by making us constantly inquire every thought and turning our attention back to its source and recognizing the truth as it is, here and now. The immense grace of Bhagavan, with which alone we have come to this most direct path, which brings the clear experience of that one truth, and which makes us contemplate about it, which is completely the absence of all this duality. Let us inquire with every thought, every rising thought, if at all there is, to whom is this, who am I, and trace the the thought to its source, or what do I refer to as I. With that very inquiry, the grace of the Master is invoked, which takes us and makes us one with that oneself here and now. And with repeated practice, Bhagavan assures that the whole Chit Jada Granthi will be swallowed in that pure light of self, Kirana Valya, and then Arunachala Paramatman alone shines as I. The immense grace of Bhagavan. For the next 20 minutes, let us do Atma Vichara. Namo Ramana. Over to Shraddha.
Namo Ramana, prostrations to Ramana, shining as the self in all beings. With immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, in this part of the Satsang, we are meditating on Bhagavan's Upadesha to various disciples, Bhagavan's instructions to various disciples, which have been recorded by Ganapati Muni in the form of Ramana Gita. Ramana Gita contains 18 chapters and they are answers of Bhagavan Ramana to the differing questioners, various devotees, including Ganapati Muni himself. And these have all been collated, they've been put together and classified into 18 chapters by Ganapati Muni and recorded in Sanskrit. This is the Ramana Gita. We are now meditating on the 7th chapter of Ramana Gita, which is the chapter dedicated to self-inquiry. The questioner is Karshni and the answers are from Bhagavan to Karshni in this case, but to all of us, of course, as always, because that is the grace which has allowed these questions to come forth in the first place. We have various other very significant records of question answers from Bhagavan. The talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi is there, and there are the answers which have been recorded by Muruganar Swami in Guru Vachaka Kovai. So we find, of course, that the questions are about differing aspects of spiritual practice, and they have been allowed. Actually, these questions have been allowed by Bhagavan, because there is nothing which can manifest which is disallowed, because Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi, Bhagavan himself has told Mother Aragamma that everything happens as is ordained to happen. So we do not, in one sense, question why these questions have been asked, but we may analyze that point from the perspective of our own sadhana, not in order to judge anybody else in this world, because Bhagavan does not believe in any kind of judgment himself. So we do not judge, but we look into it purely from the perspective of our own sadhana. How significant is this question? And the answer from Bhagavan to our practice of self-inquiry, because we are meditating on the practice of self-inquiry. Now, the earlier questions by Karshni were about the nature of self-inquiry and the power of self-inquiry. Bhagavan has already established the supremacy of self-inquiry in destroying all anxiety, all trouble, any kind of negativity. Sarva klesha nivritti syat phalam atma vicharataha. So even when Bhagavan says that self-inquiry can solve all our problems, destroy all our difficulties, does the mind turn immediately back to the practice of self-inquiry, and does the mind stay with the practice of self-inquiry as instructed by him to Mother Aragammal in the Appalam song? Santatam salipara santoshamahave, at all times, without ever tiring. How many times do I have to ask myself, who am I? How many times do I have to ask myself, for who is this thought? This thought is for me. Then who am I? How many times do I have to ask myself this? For how long do I have to practice this? Bhagavan says such a question should not arise at all. One must joyously, santoshamagave, joyously continue the practice at all times. Santatam. But if the mind does not do so, then what is one to do? We can keep trying. Sadhu Swami says it is not good to force the pace of sadhana. He says, you see, if there is a game in exhibitions where you take a sledgehammer and you beat a particular bell, and then that it rises up with the force of the blow which one gives, it rises up and it should hit the highest point for us to be victorious in the game. That should be the extent of force in our blow with that sledgehammer. So when we take one blow, two blows, three blows, he says initially our record will improve. Say supposing we have not been able to hit the top in the beginning and we are repeatedly trying to give blows in order to reach higher and higher. He says there is a point at which we will reach our best in that effort. It may not be the very best, but we will reach our best in that effort. And subsequent to that, no matter how long we may try, our effort will produce diminishing results. Of course, in economics, we talk about the diminishing marginal returns, that anything will produce diminishing returns. Even a taste for, say, in economics it is said that supposing I wish to eat a sweet, a mango or a chocolate, and I eat one, I still feel like eating another. Then I eat the second one, then I still feel like eating another. Then I eat the third one. So each one of us has a particular saturation point. For some of us it may be one. It depends on how much of a sweet tooth we have. So if we have a saturation point, beyond that we will start disliking that object. So the returns will start diminishing. So Sadhu Swami says it is the same case. He gives the example of that beating that the bell with the hammer, or the trigger to the bell with the hammer. Similarly, in sadhana, he says we may sit down for our session of self-inquiry and we start asking ourselves. We start watching the mind. We find that thoughts are arising. So we start asking for each thought, for whom is this thought? And then the answer comes to us, who am I? And then we remain with that question. We remain without any other further thought. Because we do not know the answer for the question, who am I? We do not know. So we remain with that thought, with that awareness, not with the thought. We remain with that awareness, and what happens when we remain with that awareness? The self alone is revealing itself. But what may happen is another thought may arise. So we repeat the process. So we keep on repeating this process for a set amount of time. After some time, we will tire. And then the capacity to stay with the self, the capacity to stay silent will start diminishing. So Sadhu Swami says, stop at a point where you are happy with your session of self-inquiry. Don't force yourself beyond that too much. Maybe you can try a little. But if you find that the mind has been happy with a particular session of self-inquiry, then stop there. Don't force yourself too much till you get to a very tired kind of a situation. He says the result of this is that you will feel like coming back to self-inquiry, because the taste of the happiness will remain with you rather than the taste of tiredness. So this is the clue which he is giving. This is what we find that in conditioning, in all various psychology experiments, they give rewards to the mice. The mice seek the rewards and they try to avoid punishments. The mind tries to seek rewards. Why do we look for gratification outside in the first place? Because there is some experience. We think we have tasted some joy over there, and that is why we are looking for gratification outside. So we should be able to find some gratification within, is what Sadhu Om Swami is suggesting very sweetly. He is suggesting that. So what happens is, we should push our self-inquiry session to the point where we are comfortable. After that, let us get up. Let us do something else. Get back to self-inquiry. This is a suggestion from Sri R. Natarajan. He says, get back to self-inquiry. The moment you feel any mood, the moment that question arises within you naturally, when you feel like turning inwards, you might have finished your session, you might be in the midst of some other work, but suddenly the question may come back to you. Who am I? Who is doing this? At that time, get back. At that time, hold for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Again, till the mood is there. Make use of the good mood for self-inquiry. This is another suggestion. Now, what happens to the time in between? What happens when we have just finished a session of self-inquiry, and we have not yet got into another next session, maybe for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whenever we can. What happens in between? What do we do in between? That is the relevance of the question which Kashni puts next. He says, is it okay to do some other good things? If I am ready and ripe for self-inquiry, I feel that it's not, that is the most important thing to do, because I'm not particularly interested by anything which the mind engages in, which are objective sense experiences. For one, Bhagavan says, one who is not interested in sense experiences, one who is no more attached to the body, such a one is ripe for self-inquiry. Supposing I am already ripe for self-inquiry by my sense of vairagya, discrimination, viveka, rather than vairagya, and partly also vairagya, the intensity to put into practice the viveka, what do I do with the remaining time? Is it alright for me to do other things like snanam, sandhya, japa, homa, what all is prescribed as good for spiritual practice, and also what is prescribed as a must? So Bhagavan says, yes, it is good to do all these things, because if you engage in some good activity, your mind will not be moving towards negative activities. Negative tendencies will not be taking root. So do good things, and especially certainly do what is prescribed for you to do. Prescribed swadhyaya, because that is even recommended by the Gita Acharya Sri Krishna, saying it is much better to do one's swadharma than engage in anything else which one may even think one is good at. One must engage in one's swadharma. So what is swadharma? There are certain prescribed things by the scriptures. But today we may or may not be aware of those scriptural injunctions. But certainly we can see in which situation life has placed it, in which situation Bhagavan has placed us, that our praptam, that which Bhagavan says that the divine force guides our life by creating situations for us. So if we are placed in a particular situation, what is the call of that situation? Engaging in that is okay. It is much better than engaging in some other negative karma. And Bhagavan says such engagement may be with kaya vamana, as he has explained to us in Upadesha Saram. It may be the body, the speech and the mind which engage in such good activities, or in one's prescribed activities, and this will prevent the body, the speech and the mind from engaging in negative activities. But Bhagavan also says here, of his own accord, he says that the ripe one, for what does he do? The karma. He does pakvascha karma kurvanti. For what do they do it? They do it for paresham upadeshaya shemaya cha manishinaha, to share the experience, to instruct others to do the same sadhana and for the welfare of the world. And what is it? He says, Atyanta Shuddha Manasam Pakvabnam Adhikarinam Idam Lokopakaraya Karmajalam Bhavishyati. He says this is done for the Loka Upakara. Now, why is he talking about the highest one and his action? To one who is asking about self-inquiry, it is being said by Bhagavan because this can be an example for us to follow. What should we do? What kind of activity should we try to engage in to the extent that we have a choice? Because we seem to have a choice. In our life, we seem to have a choice. We seem to be choosing what we want to do. It is only after an event that we are able to say this is how it was destined to be. To the extent that we seem to have a choice, let us choose to do activities which are for the good, for the higher good of all beings. Let us try to choose this. Let us try to emulate the activities of the great ones by doing what we think will be for the highest good, and never engage in something which is only for my good. I want to do this because I want to do this. No, that is not the point for a sadhaka. The sadhaka should engage in activities which to his or her understanding are for a higher good, are for a wider good. How can we widen the benefits from our activities? How can we share the benefits from our activities with a maximum number of people? Is it possible for us to engage in such activities by our choice? This is the guidance that Bhagavan is giving us through this particular verse, this particular answer which has come from him of his own accord. This is the support to self-inquiry, that we should choose not only good activities to engage in, but if possible, we should choose activities which are for the good of larger number of people, and this will certainly support our self-inquiry. And whenever we get back to it, and we should get back to it as frequently as possible until the self-inquiry becomes satatam, and then the nishtha itself becomes unwavering by his immense grace. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
Apara Satchit Sukhavarirashi Yasyormimatram Bhuvanam Samastam Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Gabhiram Chintavihinam Hrudi Chintayami Chintavihinam Hrudi Chintayami